May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Move approval.
Manager Miller, second by Manager Mackel. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Under information items this evening, we have introduction of a new staff member, Mr. Beck.
President White, Board of Managers. Today I'm introducing Caitlin Strube, who has started at the district. She started work with us last Monday and has been a huge addition from helping us with managing the ResNet level sensor network to clearing out bogs from some of our carp barriers to helping even Alex Steele with doing some GIS work already. So it's been really fun to see some of the things that Caitlin already helped us out with, but with that being said, I wanted her to be able to give a little bit of a background about herself and what she's excited about.
President White, Board of Managers, it's nice to meet you. I grew up here in Minnesota. I went to the University of Minnesota where I studied fisheries, wildlife, and conservation biology with a minor in marine biology, which led me to pursue a master's degree at University of Miami in tropical marine ecosystem management, where my thesis was on tissue regeneration of a mountainous star coral and its correlation with disease resistance, where I was a diver with the disease team down there. And that led me back to Minnesota, where I am now with you guys. And so far, like Brian said, I got to work with a lot of stream work, which is really fun, and also the sensors, which I'm excited to get my hands on and just overall learn more about Minnehaha Creek Watershed District, and the place where I got to grow up. So
Welcome. I'm glad you joined us.
Welcome.
thank you so much.
Yes, indeed. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
You
I'm
just
excited.
Miami, Florida, or Ohio?
Miami, Florida. Yes.
It's warm weather.
Yeah, I know. Came back here.
We have no coral, but otherwise, it's great to have you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
On the consent agenda, we have approval of the April 13th board meeting minutes and the general checking account, surety checking account, and wire transfers, and 3 resolutions. 2319 is authorization to amend 5 vegetation management contracts. 2320 is recognizing Juneteenth, and 2321 is acceptance of a donation. Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Manager Olson moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Manager Hitchmati seconds. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I've attended a couple of meetings that other managers have attended as well, and so Manager Olson's going to give reports on the Three Rivers State of the Parks meeting and the Metro Watersheds meeting.
Okay, I'll do the parks first. We had an opportunity to go see the Three Rivers Park State of the Park address at the Highland Ski Hill, the base of the Highland Ski Area. And first of all, it's been a long time since my kids were in high school ski racing there, and the facility is spectacular. They had a lot of people attend. There were information booths all over the place, and one of the things that was so striking, back in 2017, Three Rivers took away all the fees because they wanted to give everybody an opportunity to enjoy the parks, regardless of income. The other thing they said they did was accepted lots of help from over 4,800 volunteers every year. So imagine 4,800 people doing the work it takes to get that organization. So it was presented by the super as well as the president of the board, and it was a very informative meeting, and had a lot of good response there. Also, we had our Metro Watersheds meeting, and 2 meetings ago, one of the watersheds we've been asked to put a climate adaptation program together. Does anybody have an example of what one of those look like? And I said at that meeting, well, yeah, we have this 37-page plan that we just got an award for. And the question was, well, can we get a copy of it? I said, you can get it right now, just get on our website, and but I'll send one in the next day. So we sent it in, and it took 2 meetings, but this meeting was to present it. And fortunately for that whole organization, we had James Whiskey there doing it. And he was given 15 minutes with as much question and answer period as they would take, which turned his 15-minute presentation, which he did on time, into a 1-hour show with questions that, when he condensed his slides, he had maybe 1/3 of the slides in his deck. But every time they came up with a question, he'd nail in on that slide and that responded to it, and he'd answer it that way. So it was note-taking like crazy, and I was very proud to be part of the answer to everybody's request. Hosting the meeting was our own president, Sherry White, and so instead of the normal group of people that do that, she stood in and did a fantastic job. So great meeting. We also had lots of agency association updates from everybody from the Bowser to the MPCA, and talked a lot about protection of water resources. A lot of those groups are now keyed in right down to drinking water protection, which was the first time I'd ever heard of that as an aspect of some of the concerns. The only group that was really hurting in terms of involvement was a very small staff left at the Minnesota Department of Transportation. MnDOT had an acting engineer there, and they're looking to hire quite a few people. So he said, if you get an answering machine, that's why. He said, we are really hurting right now. So that was the only uncomfortable presentation, I would say, but everything else was quite in tune with who our partners are and how they're helping us. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me footnote just briefly to thank the other managers who attended the Three Rivers event. We had Manager Miller, Manager Sando, Manager Olson, and I'm missing Manager Maxwell. So we had definitely had a quorum there.
He sat at a separate table though.
I know, he put his old city hat on, didn't he? And I had great conversations with people, and I picked up 8 different conversations about things that are in our district, so that was really, really interesting. 2 comments. Mayor Whalen came up from Minnetrista, came up to Manager Olson and asked if the 6-mile trail was ready because they want to do their city bus tour and include that. So that was fun. And I had a very, very enthusiastic response or a statement from one of the naturalists out at Lowry Nature Center. They use the Dutch Lake property, and he walks the kids over from Hilltop Elementary, and they use that. And he gave me a long list of the kinds of lessons they can learn from that woods that belongs to the Watershed District. So that was really, really fun to hear.
And in that regard, he had his first graduating class. And what he said
That's
was,
very
now
good.
that they're 4th graders, they're the old kids. And the new kindergartners are coming in, and we pair up one 4th grader with a kindergartner, and they walk together and explain the responsibilities that they've had for the water protection, and that the young kids is now, they're handing it off to them as the next generation to come through.
Cute.
Beautiful.
That was really cool. And then there were a couple of topics that were brought up at the Metro Mod that might come back for further discussion. Someone suggested sharing CARP ideas, and there was a strong voice for creating a Metro Watershed lobbying group. So I don't know if those are going anywhere, but they were mentioned in the meeting. I also, not related to the watershed, but I attended a League of Women Voters Forum of the the South Lake mayors. And they, of course, all talked about stormwater. It's just such a big topic. The mayor of Tonka Bay talked about their water problem, the cost to put new water lines just down their main drag, County Road 19, is $5.2 million. And I was contrasting that with the $5 million that Met Council has for stormwater, I think. So, not going to go very far, right? Those are expensive projects. So, and Manager Sando, you attended Metro Mod too, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, that was great, Metro Warsheds, not Metro Mod anymore. The executive committee met this morning. Manager Olson chaired because I was late, and we were able to talk with Mr. Herring about the audit report that is on our agenda for tonight, and we're very satisfied, I can say. Manager Miller, could you give a report from the Planning and Policy Committee?
We had another charrette, is that what you call it? I guess it'd be without a lot of pictures. For our planning effort, planning our planning effort for the next 10-year plan. And it was interesting and extensive, I think, for a start. And we got a lot of work to do ahead, but I think everybody's mind is set to do an outstanding job that is meaningful focus on flooding.
I thought it was a great discussion, and we're starting this meeting a little late to accommodate that. We really covered a lot of ground. That was wonderful. The upcoming meeting and event schedule is listed in the agenda. We have our usual meeting schedule, and this is a change. It had been that on the 28th, tomorrow, we were going to be having our field trip at Cottageville Park, but that's been postponed because of weather to May 12th. And the Citizens Advisory Committee is meeting May 17th. Manager Maxwell is the liaison there. Are there any other reports or events managers have to bring back? Then let's go to item 11.1, which is the financial audit and fund transfers. We have two resolutions here and a presentation leading into that.
Thank you, President White. I think Mr. Herring is going to join me here in a second once I get the screen set up. So, President White, I think you just did my job really well. You introduced Resolution 23022 coming up, Andy, to accept the 2022 financial audit, and Mr. Herring from Redpass here to step the board through that, and then Ms. Enstad's in the audience from Abdo, our accountant. And then paired with the acceptance of the audit is Resolution 2323, the end of year fund transfers and closures. And there's a little table in the resolution that explains those transfers. So I'll leave you in the capable hands of Mr. Herring.
All right. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Nice to see everybody in person for a change. It's been a few years.
Yes.
So, my name's again Andy Herring from Redpath and Company. I have a degree in accounting. Not quite as impressive as your new employee, but that's my
No
background.
fisheries.
So first, start with our annual report, or your annual report that we audited is up on the screen there. I'll jump ahead and just really point out a few highlights as part of my presentation. I know it's going to be small, but it'll just serve as a few talking points. And here's our independent auditor's report, our opinion on the financial statements. So what we do is we test the transactions and balances for 2022, and also the footnotes that go along with those, making sure what is in this financial statement document is correct, and also that everything that should be in here is correct, meaning are all liabilities recorded that should be recorded, are all expenses recorded that should be recorded, those types of things. We're also verifying the accuracy then of the numbers as well. We perform tests using at times going to source documentation such as invoices, other methods, analytical procedures, comparing amounts to budget or prior years. So there's different ways we perform the audit. The results, the first section there in the report, our opinion. The first paragraph describes what we audited. The second paragraph, in our opinion, the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects of Minnehaha Creek Watershed District. All material respects, we don't audit to the penny, but we audit a sample of transactions, so they're there's a little leeway there, but we're looking for material misstatements or significant misstatements, items that could influence the users of the financial statements. So it's an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion, the highest level of opinion that you can receive. Moving along, then the next section, it's management's discussion and analysis. This is really, like it says, management's opportunity or section of the annual financial report to describe what happened, maybe some trends or why revenues increased or why expenses decreased. So there's some narrative information in that part of the financial statements. Following that are the financial statements themselves. Governments they have to present two formats of financial statements, a full accrual financial statements, which contains all assets and liabilities, like long-term capital assets, long-term debt. Those aren't used as much on a day-to-day basis. It's more it's statements 3 and 4 that you're more used to seeing and probably monitoring on a monthly basis. Statement 3, your balance sheet, nothing all that noteworthy there. Statement 4 is the income statement for the year ended 2022. And I'll touch on this statement a little bit more later on. There's actually a more detailed statement that if you really want to dig into the numbers, I'll point it out to you. Footnotes, primarily just an update on accounting policies and a little more detail of what's in the financial statements. Not a whole lot to point out here. I know this is very small, but note 6 is the Watershed District's long-term debt. And I always think it's good for everybody to be aware of the debt of the MCWD. And I know there's a Wells Fargo note that'll be paid off here in 2023, so that'll be nice to see that. Moving along, there is the statement 6. It's like page 46 is numbered on the bottom. Here's where if you really want to dig into the numbers, I'd say this is the place to go. You've got your budget, original budget, final budget, and column for actual numbers, a variance from budget, and then a comparative column for 2021. So if I recall, the revenues were about on pace with budget. Expenditures were under budget, mainly due to the timing of projects. Overall, fund balance increased $2,452,000. Now, $1 million of that was contributed to the sale of land, for the partial sale of land at the cold facility. You know what I'm talking about, facility land. So that was a one-time, bump in fund balance due to that land sale. But overall, a continued strong financial position. Following that, near the back of the financial statements is really an income statement for every project outstanding. So again, more detail back there. Some supplemental information there. And then we get to an other required reports section. There's a report on internal control, which is the policies and procedures of the organization. We don't audit all of the policies and procedures, but we're definitely looking at them as we perform the audit. Now, when I say policies and procedures, I'm talking about proper approval over expenditures, ensuring that no one person has too much responsibility over any given area, meaning a proper segregation of duty and checks and balances, things of that nature. There's also a report on in compliance. You have to comply with various state statutes, so we test for those statutes as well, based on a guide that the state auditor issues. This year, there is one internal control finding that we're reporting the criteria an entity's internal controls should allow management or employees to prevent or detect misstatements on a timely basis. So, any misstatements or any adjustments should be corrected by the time the numbers get to the auditor. We cannot be part of an entity's internal controls. And what the finding is, during the audit, we just found one item, but it was dollar-wise a little bit more significant. A payment to a contractor was originally reported as a 2022 expense, and we looked further into it and determined it should be a 2023 expense. So really just a timing of when that expense was recorded, and it's a little bit more of the background behind that. There was no indication on the invoice from the contractor of when the service was performed, and the invoice was actually received in, I think, well, around January 15th. So usually contractors aren't too quick to invoice things, so it's easy to make that presumption that an invoice received in mid-January was for work performed in the previous year. Well, in this case, we dug a little bit further and determined that as the boardwalk project that the work didn't actually start until 2023. So we proposed a correction. That correction was made to shift that expense back into 2023. And the bottom part of this finding, views of responsible officials and corrective action plan, been discussed in how this can be prevented in the future, and there's been some additional procedures implemented to prevent this type of item from happening again. Lastly, like I mentioned, is that legal compliance report. No findings related to compliance during our audit. So good news there. Lastly, I don't have it up here, but it's just a 3-page letter, maybe it's 4 pages, communication with those charged with governance. A letter required communications from the auditor to the Board of Managers. Some fairly routine communications in here. There's one new standard that affects really all organizations, government and for-profit, relating to leases. For some entities, it's a big deal. For yours, you don't have any material leases. But we noted in here that you implemented it, but it didn't have an effect. But it's noted so that nobody questions, well, did they implement this or didn't they? So it's you did, but it didn't have an effect. It also, we are required to comment on it, but I'm happy to comment on it that there were no difficulties encountered or disagreements with management or anybody we dealt with during the audit. Aaron and Deb work well together and provide us much of the information, or pretty much all of the information we need. Everything was provided timely. They were very helpful, very easy to work with. So I'm glad to report that as well. And then finally, there's a spot for just any other findings or issues. We continue to report that there's an amount that's been payable or held due to the city of Minneapolis for about 20 years now. I understand there's ideas in the works or plans in the works to work with Minneapolis on a future project to really use those funds. I don't recall the details, but hopefully at this time next year that'll be taken care of. And then we've also noted in the past a few things related to the surety deposits We do not have that comment in here this year, which is a good thing. There's been progress made there. There was an unreconciled balance from the actual listing of surety deposits to the general ledger. That has been taken care of. That was taken care of in 2022, so that was about $98,000. So that no longer exists. And then staff continued to work on clearing those old deposits that there is an identifier to who they were collected from, but for whatever reason, a lot of times the business is no longer operating, and it's just very difficult to return those deposits. But staff is making progress on that, and may also consider following state guidelines and turning over some of those deposits as unclaimed property, but that would be the last resort. That, it's not a finding, but that recommendation is no longer in here. So again, progress has been made on that. So overall, a very clean audit, just one internal control finding that related to a very specific item, but I'd say overall a successful audit. And I don't see any concerns or anything that you should really be worried about or need to take action on going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Herring.
You're welcome. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Certainly. Is there a motion to adopt resolution 2322, motion from Manager Santo? Is there a second? Manager Hedgemati seconds. Are there questions or comments for Mr. Herring?
I have one question for you.
Go ahead.
On page 34, you detail our depreciation and capital assets. You mentioned the depreciation expense going to government activities. Is that an actual cash transfer, or is that just on paper? How are you handling that depreciation?
That is not a cash expense. So I mentioned the kind of the two different sets of financial statements. The cash outlay, let's just say that was if you purchased a truck. The cash outlay comes when you purchase the truck up front. That's when you pay the cash. Now, under those full accrual financial statements, you do not recognize that expense right away for the truck purchase. You recognize it over 5 years as depreciation expense. So that's what that is. It's not actually a cash
Okay.
expenditure. Yep.
The wording depreciation expense was charged to programs. I thought, well, okay,
Yeah.
that helps explain.
It's a non-cash charge would
Got
be
it.
a good way to describe it. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you for asking. Is there other question? If not, then all those in favor of adopting the resolution approving the audit report, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And I want to thank auditor, of course, but also thank our staff, and particularly Ms. Johnson, for working through this and also working through the sureties. It was really fun not to see that in the audit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Next year, this will be
Yeah, that's really nice too. And now moving to resolution 23023, the fund transfers and account closures.
You know, could I ask a question? I'm sorry,
Yes, you
I'm
may.
slow on this. Before the auditor leaves, I haven't had a chance to study the audit, but we got a cash position. And only because of all the problems with several banks, you know, that we don't have that. Is that a investment, or is that a deposit in a bank?
That is a deposit in Bremer Bank. Is that what you use, I believe? Yeah. So that is a deposit.
Okay.
So there.
I'm absolutely convinced there's nothing wrong with Bremer Bank, but everybody was convinced that there was nothing wrong with the Silicon Valley Bank, which there wasn't, except they invested their funds wrong, and they couldn't honor on our request for removal, or what do they call it? Withdrawal. And because they couldn't sell the securities fast enough, they could sell them, but they would be at a big loss because they invested them at lower rates than were available on the market today. Have you got it? What would be normal for a government agency now on make sure we have liquidity and safety?
Yeah. Not to say anything bad couldn't happen, but governments are required to obtain collateral or some sort of surety bond to cover their deposits. And we test for that and we've done
Okay.
that.
All right.
So that's your main safety net. And so the best thing you can do is keep on top of that, which I'm sure Aaron
Yeah, so
helps
we do that
monitor.
monthly. We
Yeah,
look at that
make
every
sure
month.
sufficient collateral is pledged to ensure those deposits.
And that collateral is committed to us and no one else?
Correct.
Okay,
Mhm.
all right. Thank you very
Well,
much.
unless there's a second on it, somebody could put a second on it. The mortgage, that would be a mortgage, never mind.
The collateral is some kind of an investment.
Yes, do you have is it the Federal Home Loan Bank note? Right, so it's a,
But if it's marked to the market,
right, it's, yeah, the market value of that collateral has to be sufficient,
so they have to maintain the collateral has to maintain our investment. Okay,
Yep,
great. Okay,
so if the market value of that collateral goes down, they've got to supply additional collateral.
okay, great. Thank you.
They have 110% of
Okay,
that
all right.
balance, so not even just 100, they
Good,
get that extra 10% to ensure.
terrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good point.
Adoption of Resolution 23023 to authorize fund transfers and closures. Is there a motion to approve, adopt?
So moved.
Which body moves to adopt? Is there a second?
Second.
I'll take Manager Sando's second. Any questions or thoughts before we vote? Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution is approved. Mr. Heyman, item 11.2.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Managers. I am before you this evening with 11.2, which is authorization to contract with the Lattice Development for installation of storm sewer at 325 Blake Road. Doesn't want to click. You'll recall the master plan for the 325 Blake Road site consists of 4 multifamily buildings. I can pull up the laser pointer too. A series of townhomes, a commercial building, and then of course you have the greenway components with the regional stormwater facility next to the creek. Presently, the site on the northwest portion of the parcel is Building A. It's often referenced as Building A. This is the building or the building pad that we sold to Lattice, the 1.34 acres last July. That's presently under construction. As it relates to construction of the site total and what they have authorization to work on, and the areas of the site in which they will be functioning until the site is occupied, they have the 1.34 acres, which is known as Lot 2, Block 2, that's presently under construction. They have the ability to access ingress and egress off the site, as well as construct the area in green that you see here, which is the new driveway and access off of Lake Street. And then they also have an area for construction parking and additional easement to move some temporary storm sewer through, and that's all in the what would be known as the Phase 2 acquisition component, so a portion of the site that we'd be selling at a later date. And of course, then they have the ability to encroach on the sidewalks and some of the other parcels as they construct. That all ends at certificate of occupancy. The reason we're bringing this before the board this evening is directly related to that site, so the site that in question now that we're facing east. So this is the north portion of the site, the building that's under construction right now, and your access off of Lake Street. We have our 2 regional stormwater diversions coming into the site, one from the north off of Lake Street, one from the south underneath the rail line coming from Powell Road. Those are highlighted in blue to indicate where those pipes will be in the final design. I do want to note we haven't approved our final design yet. The board has approved 60% and 90%. The 100% design is in our hands and will be before the board on May 11th. This component of the design will not change. It's subsurface storm sewer, the manhole structures, the elevations, all of that is fixed. It needs to deliver water to the facility. So that shouldn't be a concern of the board's as we're thinking about partnering with Lattice to install a portion of the site. What we are looking at from an installation component or a cooperative effort would be off of Lake Street. This area in green here is already existing. It's the Lake Street stormwater diversion that was stubbed into our site. What you see in the green circle is an existing manhole that exists on site that was installed by Met Council through their joint construction effort with the district. The area in blue here would be about 158 feet of total pipe and an additional manhole structure, and that is what Lattice is proposing to install on behalf of the district, because they will be in here, finish grading, putting a variety of other subsurface utilities in, such as water mains and sewer. And so when they have that cut open, there's an opportunity for us to collaborate with their contractor and install this component of the future storm sewer diversion. I will note one thing that they have to maintain, which wouldn't typically be in our plans, is there's a 12-inch, what we call a weeper pipe. So presently, this structure here does receive some stormwater just based on the drainage in the area, and there's a small pipe that allows it to drain so the water doesn't stay sitting in that pipe. They need to remove that pipe, but then we would have to reconnect because we will have some additional sewer in place until the regional system is in. It's a minor amount and it's a very small pipe, but you will see that in the cost estimates. Otherwise, everything else is to be installed. And then what you see in orange here is the remaining components of the Lake Street diversion, and these would all be installed by the district and our contractor, or in a joint effort with potentially a Lattice as the roads and infrastructure are installed. So this evening, what we're talking about is about $84,000 worth of construction components. It's the removal of the existing pipe I had talked about, that small 12-inch pipe, and then the connections and installation of the remaining infrastructure. This will be done, the estimates we've received are from Vite, and it would be completed by Vite, which is the same contractor that did the demolition for the district. Frana is the general contractor for Lattice, but they're waiving this as a change order and just allowing it as a straight pass-through with Lattice and Vite. We have had our engineer review all of it at HDR and confirm that everything is in conformance with our plans and submittals. And then they did provide also an estimate of our approximate cost savings by not having to come into the site later, do demolition of the curb, roadway, and some of the landscaping, replace, and of course, conduct traffic control as well, because there will be residents living in this new building by the time we would get to this component of the work. So with that, the next steps, if the board were to approve this evening, would be final engineering review of those construction submittals. HDR has already reviewed them once and is confirming final elevations and the sump structure, the manhole structure itself. And then we'll be back in front of the board, as I noted, on May 11th with final design and the cooperative agreement with the City of Hopkins for Cottageville Park Phase 2. We'll be going to the City Council then on May 16th to discuss the design and take any final feedback, or actually present the final design to council, as well as the cooperative agreement. And then construction of the storm sewer components would occur likely summer 23, maybe into the fall. The building itself is scheduled to be open December 1st, and they're on schedule as of right now. So it would be sometime before winter. And with that, board action in front of you, I won't recite it, but it is to authorize us to contract with the Lattice to use their contractor to install the storm sewer infrastructure at a cost of $84,170 and an additional contingency up to 10% dependent upon administrator's approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Heyman. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
Move approval.
Manager Miller, is there a second? Manager Hitchmati. Any questions for Mr. Heyman? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, sir. We next have a board discussion item. I haven't skipped anything, have I? For the Blake Road restoration and redevelopment update. And Mr. Heyman is also presenting this.
I am, and most of this will look familiar. Good evening, Madam Chair and managers. This discussion item is before the board this evening regarding the purchase and sale agreement for 325 Blake Road, and we have a little bit of an update for the board based on some of the recent conversations we've been having with the developer, Alatis. Again, here's the master plan that the purchase and sale agreement was approved upon. The purchase and sale agreement for the site itself was authorized, or signed, I should say, executed May 9th, 2022. That's an important date as there's a lot of milestones that come based on the date of execution. The master plan I'm showing here is because that purchase and sale agreement itself is predicated on this being wholly what is delivered through the two-phase takedown, or what is now a three-phase takedown from Alatis LLC, and I'll explain that to the board very briefly. The area you see in blue here is the Greenway and Regional Stormwater Facilities. This is the portion of the site that will be retained by the Watershed District at the close of all transactions. It's about 4.5 acres and encompasses all of the Greenway and regional facilities. The first phase takedown under the purchase and sale agreement was for everything you see in green. So it's that north parcel that's presently under construction, as well as the two multifamily buildings on the south of the site, the commercial building, and the right-of-way, which will be dedicated over to the city as public infrastructure upon close. And then the phase 2 transaction was for Outlet C, which is the townhomes, and what's identified as Lot 2, or Lot 1, Block 2, which is a future senior cooperative area. The purchase and sale agreement was modified shortly after we had executed it in July of 2022 to allow for the sale of the southern parcel to Alatis. What that did was break the site then into phase 1A being that parcel, phase 1B being the remaining multifamily that was to be acquired as part of the original phase, and then the rest of the site going shortly thereafter as phase 2. So the reason I had noted the May 9th, 2022 date is that was the identified feasibility period. There's 1 year for the buyer to look at the site from a due diligence standpoint and conduct its investigation, make a determination on the suitability of the site for what they have planned to construct. That feasibility period ends May 9th, 2023, so 1 year from execution. But they do have the opportunity to extend twice, and it's a unilateral decision by Alatis alone to extend that purchase and sale agreement for 90 days for $25,000 for the first extension, and then a second extension could occur for the same amount, 90 days at $25,000. So if you were to extend the 90 days, that would put their first extension expiration early August, and if they were to extend the second time, we would be looking at November 5th, 2023. And before you this evening, and what we will discuss most likely in closed session, and I would look to our counsel, Louis Smith, to guide the board, is we do have a proposal from Alatis for board consideration regarding amending the purchase and sale agreement, and it would be the second amendment, the first being the sale of the first parcel, Building A. And that proposal would be discussed in closed session if the board so chooses to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Heyman. Mr. Smith, would you state the cause for closed session?
Yes, Madam President, managers. Madam President, managers, the request would be to go into closed session for the purpose of considering a change of terms for the disposition of the real estate at 325 Blake Road in Hopkins.
Thank you. Would someone make a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Manager Miller, is there a second?
Second.
Manager Maxwell, those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We will go into closed session. We are in closed session. I'd like a motion to go back into open session.
So moved.
Manager Sando moves. Is there a second? Manager Hejmati seconds. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is time for the administrator's report. I want to just put a comment in ahead of you, and something I neglected to say before. I'm really happy with the two administrators who are administering Metro Watersheds. Laura, already now I've forgotten their names, but Tina Carstens and Laura Jester. They, in fact, have lined up two speakers, special reports for the next two meetings, and we're really in close contact with the agency reports and made sure we knew what was coming in. And they're just doing a lovely job, so I'm real happy about that.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can talk.
Is it me or is it issues, inquiries, and ideas? I always get, does that come first? I don't know. I don't have the agenda.
I forgot to ask. I'm sorry, Manager Miller.
I mean, am I right or wrong?
No, you are right. Board inquiries, issues, and ideas. Anything people want to add to the list?
I just got a comment.
Yeah.
You know, I get kind of tired of complimenting staff all the time. But I had a discussion that I got approved by James before I had it with Brian Beck. And we spent an hour together talking about wetlands and stuff. And it was just so enlightening. It was just unbelievable. Then he summarized it with a couple page of paper. You know, we didn't come to any conclusions at all, but we summarized the discussion and all that. And it was the clarity that he helped provide was just absolutely incredible. I've been on this board for a long time, and I don't know what the hell I'm talking about on the wetlands. And he clarified, you know, that he did, you know, have a pretty good understanding, and that, you know, what they need to really understand the benefits and all that. And it was just, I went away from there. I was just like walking on in a cloud, because I thought, this is really good that, you know, that we've got people like that can educate you and get you that enthusiastic after all these years about something. I just wanted to comment that, James.
Can you pass that on to the rest of us?
I think James took the paper and he's.
Yeah,
he's gonna
I'll
finish.
make sure everybody gets a copy.
Yeah,
Yep.
good, makes sense.
Yep.
Thanks, Manager Miller.
Good.
No ideas, huh?
Oh, I got him, but. Not
Well,
really.
two that we're still tracking that are live, are connecting with Joel Carlson and Mr. Smith on the Supreme Court decision and bringing a briefing back to board. I think generally where we've landed is we're waiting for this session to conclude, and then we want to also re-engage our partners over at Hennepin County, see how the Supreme Court issue might fit into their legislative platform long-term. So we haven't lost track of that. And then I think the other one was, let's make sure that the presentations that the board gets, that there's access to those after they're given. And so we're going to start that in 2023. So we're just going through the process of having staff PDF and drop everything into Dropbox. So I think starting the next meeting, the board should probably get a link to Dropbox, and you'll be able to go meeting by meeting and agenda item by agenda item and access the PDF presentations. So
If you're looking for 2024 goals, you could put the presentations in the packet.
yep.
Sorry.
Gotcha.
See if you remember that, December 2023. I wrote it down. Okay, great. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to lead off the administrator's report with some sad news this evening. Mark Rosenberg, longtime Minnehaha Creek Watershed District CAC member. He's with us for 15 years. He passed away at home last Thursday, and we're not sure the details, but I will say for people that have sat with the CAC, Mark he just brought a ton of energy and enthusiasm always to his work with the Watershed District, and I think all of his other parallel environmental interests. And he was with us, he's one of those long timers that was with us through significant periods of change and just brought always just a positive attitude to his work with the watershed. So we're really going to miss him.
He was on the CAC how long?
15 years.
15, thank you.
Yeah.
They just quit, didn't they? Didn't they just, or was it a long time ago?
No, he's on our Citizens Advisory Committee.
Yeah, but when did he stop being on it? When did he stop being, he was currently on?
He's an active member.
He's an active member. Ooh.
Yeah. Yep. So pretty unexpected. And Samantha's going to be bringing a resolution of recognition for the upcoming board meeting. We've already circulated a sympathy card at a staff level. We're going to make sure his family gets that. We're doing the same thing when we meet the CAC on the 17th. And I have one for everybody this evening if you're kind enough to sign that before you leave, and we'll pass our condolences.
Do we send flowers or anything like that?
There's a note on his obituary that in lieu of flowers, they want donations to, I think it was the Steiger Foundation.
Can we do that?
I'd have to look at our gift policy to check on that.
Or can we use the money, some of the money that we just got as a donation?
I'm not sure that we can do that, but I'll have to look.
And
Yeah,
otherwise,
gifts are a touchy area.
yeah.
Is this gonna go to his family?
His family, yes.
And he has a wife, children, what?
I don't know the complete extent of his family circumstances, so.
Okay.
MARC?
Yes.
MARC,
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
yep. So sad news there.
You know, as long as we're talking about people passing and then contribute, I'd like to have you think about maybe naming the pathway from Excelsior Boulevard to the Greenway, the Bob Murphy passage or something from Japs Olson, yeah.
Bob Murphy Way.
Something like that, I don't know, you know, just acknowledge that, you know, he was 87 or 88 years old, 700 people at his funeral. I absolutely couldn't believe it. But, you know, if it wasn't for him, and his background, he was a farmer.
Yeah.
He's a farmer until he was 40 years old. And he went to work for his father-in-law running Japs Olson, you know, from the tractor. And that, I think that's why he was willing to accommodate us on the environmental kind of stuff, because he's, you know, background in farming and agriculture.
Well, and that's a good thought, but maybe even for this gentleman, you could think of another,
Yeah,
like instead of flowers, do some different walkways or, you know, something that he really got into or something like that. But I don't know if that's a.
well, just look at it, you
a
know,
good trend to start.
I agree, you know, see if it creates too many problems or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, I think it's something you should look at, but how it makes sense, but there's probably always.
Do you know where his home was, James?
Minneapolis.
Yeah, Minneapolis.
Yeah, if we could do something in that part of the
I don't know what he looked like.
glasses,
Yeah,
Okay.
Midland.
dark hair.
Like 60?
He was 74.
Okay.
I'm, want to be cautious about going overboard,
Yeah,
above and
yeah.
beyond.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
Well,
we could
that's,
set a
you know,
precedent.
come back with,
yeah.
Anyway, that is very sad. Thank you, Jace, for letting us know.
Yeah, I can, and Manager Miller was kind of to pass along the pamphlet from Mr. Murphy's funeral. It was just phenomenal. It was just kind of his whole life story. That was, I had called Japs Olson, and Bob left a really big impression on me. We spent a lot of time together, and one of the best parts of his funeral packet, I mean, there was just all these amazing quotes that have sort of guided his life, and they'd included, I'm going to butcher it, but they included his grade school poem, which I thought was really sweet, and it was something like, I like to eat peas, I like to eat them with honey. It helps them stick on the knife, but it sure makes them taste funny.
yeah, fourth grade poem.
Yeah. So water, rough transition, but water levels, right now we're actually above normal precip this year, so we're sitting on 9.5 inches. That's just about 3.5 inches above normal, but as I mentioned at previous meeting, we finished in 2022 almost 9 inches below normal, so we're still around a 5-inch deficit total. So as a result, Minnetonka is around 5 inches below 4.9 inches below ordinary high water. The creek's at 30 cubic feet per second. Obviously, the dam's still closed. It's winterized. The stop logs are in. 7 to 14 day outlook. Precipitation is normal. We're planning on taking the stop logs out this coming Monday. It's more than likely that the dam's going to stay closed till mid-May. And so we'll be issuing a water level update to communities by end of business Monday, just to let them know that whole status. We've received a few things. I think we're maybe a week or two behind schedule. Obviously, flooding at the river level's been all over the news, and so people have been asking, are we at risk? And we're not. We're in pretty good shape in terms of the water balance.
Anyway, I couldn't write nothing. I write, you would be able to write it after. I can't write.
This afternoon, we had our second to last technical advisory committee meeting here, at least for this chunk of process on rule revisions, and the Land and Water Partnership continues to be really positive energy, full turnout. It's kind of a packed house, standing room only every month. And we're now just beginning to work through synthesizing feedback, and then that's going to be the focus of the final technical advisory committee meeting. Vetting, here's all the things that we've heard, here's how we're going to be carrying that forward. And then the idea is to get that in front of the board sometime in June or July. It'll finalize the land and water partnership policy, and then also start moving us into the notice process for the rule revisions. And I think part of that wind down, as we discussed, building off tonight's conversation in committee, is going to be sending signals of where we're taking the conversation next with flood management and climate action.
James, is there a draft of the rules?
We do have working drafts, yeah, that we're working through with the technical advisory committee. And then we're getting their feedback on different sections, and then that's what we're working on right now, is bringing all that into focus.
Okay.
Is that something that you're interested in seeing?
I would be interested in seeing
Okay.
what it looks like, yeah.
Okay.
Not to bring up a new subject, but bringing up a new subject, do we have liaisons for that?
We do not have liaisons to that process, and that was a question that I remember calling.
Okay.
And the board adopted. That's because there's no policy advisory committee, and we're connecting directly with staff. We're sort of monitoring the general energy of that group and reporting back regularly. So
Okay.
that's where we've left it. What else? Holy Name. I think staff's continuing to work on planning and negotiations with both the city of Medina and a private development partner for wetland restoration up near Holy Name Lake. And we're hoping to finalize planning, I think, in the next month and bring a recommendation to the board on our potential role of your consideration in overseeing the privately funded maintenance of the project if it were to move forward. And so their staff is working through that, and they'll come forward hopefully in June. And then a few positives to hopefully round things out. We've got some good news on the Minneapolis partnership front, and we've been keeping our liaisons there, President White, Manager Miller, Manager Hedgemati, up to speed. But we did hear back from Public Works regarding the proposal. You remember we talked about that, I think, early March, maybe late February in committee. Our proposal to develop a program for investment in the Parkway. So you'll probably remember we had picked 3 focal areas, just really drilled down into some high return on investment water quality resilience projects. We proposed essentially a seed funding proposal with around $1.5 million that's currently sitting in our capital improvement plan. $1.6 million that's supposed to show up from the park board in 2026. And then $1 million of encumbered funds that we're holding for Minneapolis from a 2003 project that we're working to close out, that I think maybe even the auditor made mention of this evening. We also requested somewhere between $250,000 to $500,000 a year for a program of investment that would then, if we brought money to the table and the park did over a longer period of time, support more of a programmatic approach to the next round of projects and the next round of projects. So we did hear back within the last week in writing from Public Works. They're very supportive of the partnership. They're supportive of the geographic focus that we've proposed. They are willing to bring some funding to the table. They've brought back as $250,000 a year from 2025, 2026, 2027, 2028. So that would bring their end to $1 million, and that would bring our total to get started on this program to $5 million. They did send a pretty strong signal, I mean explicitly, that any additional funding after that is going to need to be tied to integrated planning. I think the way they framed it is ideally they want us to balance considerations that they're making all the time around aging infrastructure, their pipe network, and their flood mitigation program. And we talked about some of those projects too, just anecdotally in committee this evening. So I think really good news and a lot of movement, but stopping slightly short of a full-fledged program, and sending some signals of wanting to pull us more closely into alignment with existing public works priorities. So I don't think that's unreasonable, but it again ties into the dialogue that we had this evening, that we're seeing patterns across all of our communities where they're going to want us to play a strong role in their flood management at a local level. So next steps for us will be drafting up a work plan. They've asked us to meet with their technical team And the job of that technical team now is really focused, which is great. They're going to be looking at these project areas and essentially stress testing, asking a lot of questions, bringing their local technical knowledge to the table and helping us scope out, well, what questions do we need to answer in feasibility? So the purpose of that technical team is now to help us draft a request for proposals, essentially, for feasibility work. There's still some debate back and forth about how we track towards a steering committee meeting. It would be our liaisons, the park board, and city council members. I really think that's important to get, they like the strategy for the electeds, the program, and then ask for more, being frank. But then also bringing the term sheet so that everybody can see, here's how we're structuring things short term. So we'll see where we land with that. But regardless, it looks like we're on track to hopefully work towards a cooperative agreement by end of year. And they said in their email that one is in feasibility in 2024. So I think that's good movement.
Sounds great.
And then the final piece of good news, I got to counter Mike. Just yesterday, we were informed that the Watershed District's been chosen for the American Society of Landscape Architects 2023 Community Design Excellence Award, and in part for our more than a decade of work on the Minnehaha Creek Greenway. And we got this one unsolicited. We weren't even aware that we'd been nominated, so that's wonderful. The award ceremony is this Friday, 5 to 9 at the St. Paul Depot. We were offered 4 seats by the folks that nominated us, Damon Farber, and asked to RSVP right away, so I had offered seats to our board president and vice president, Sherry and Bill, along with me and Gabe. And I'll just read you, I guess, an excerpt from the submission that Damon Farber made on behalf of the district so you can get an understanding of why they nominated us for it. They said, or Tom Whitlock said, Minnehaha Creek Watershed District's gone through a multi-year effort to transform the water quality of the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District. And like many watersheds, they've focused on the ecology, science, and engineering of how to improve water. But what they've done in the realm of placemaking makes them unique and an example for all watersheds in the state. They've partnered with a wide variety of landscape architects to combine placemaking and ecological improvements to better educate the public and enhance recreation and public health. The results in the watershed have combined interpretive improvements, recreational improvements, and environmental improvements to advance our communities and improve empathy for our natural environment. They've developed new parks, trails, and boardwalks to improve access to these vital resources. They've also teamed with local developers to develop precedent redevelopment projects like 325 Blake Road to become examples of water-centric design and an example for all developers working around impaired waters. MCWD's entire staff and board deserve this recognition. So I think it's a nice note and a testament to the board's vision and stick-with-itness and tireless creativity over all those years. That was a fun thing to find out about this week. Manager Sando.
Can we handle some more positive news?
I'm all out, so.
The city of Edina has hired a private company, and they were down yesterday and cleaned out the 4 holding ponds, the stormwater holding ponds before it goes into the creek. And the grass had gotten, the last couple of years, quite high. They've cut it all down and raked it out so it can hold more and looks much more attractive. It's all really coming together. And the city of Edina has been a very good partner to clean up and not just let it go.
Mm-hmm. And I missed, did you say exactly where that was?
The 4 stormwater holding ponds that clean.
At Arden Park?
At Arden Park.
Oh, okay.
They clean
Gotcha.
Cut down the grass
So
over there.
looks very good.
Yeah, it sounds like they probably did some spring maintenance.
Yeah.
That's great.
I keep on talking about it. That Morningside pond, has anybody looked at it yet?
Yes.
Yes.
It is just absolutely enormous.
Yeah.
That is going to be it's going to be an attraction. They got the bridges across there and everything else. How much are they spending on that?
It was over 10. I think they were north of $12 million.
There's new trees and bushes coming in.
Yeah.
There'll be another 4.
It looks like a
Distract
lake.
them with a bridge.
Looks like a lake.
Yeah. It's really something.
Yeah, we can get out on site and bring some pictures for folks that haven't made it. And we did, to Manager Sandler's point about Arden Park, Tiffany did follow up with the city forester about the veg loss, and we'd sent an email out to the board. So They're going to be assessing this spring, and then they'll come back if there's any need for a management plan. I don't think we're entirely convinced it's beaver, because there's just been a lot of grazing and browsing by deer and other critters out there, but
The rabbits, you can tell where the snow pile was because they're about 3 feet up on top of the snow, you know, where the rabbits ate all the bark up. It is,
It's a little bit of all.
yeah, that's our sense, yeah. Thus concludes the admin report.
Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Good job.
yeah.